who was Harry Kissel? Harry Kissel was a pioneering real estate developer from Springfield, Ohio, who went on to become advisor to Presidents Herbert Hoover and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is also considered the father of the modern mortgage industry and one of the chief proponents of a practice that came to be known as redlining. The banking and real estate practices he developed led to home ownership for millions of white families. But it was at the expense of millions of Black and brown families who were excluded from home ownership based on their racial and ethnic background. In the early 1900s, Springfield was a bustling manufacturing city with whites and Blacks living in close proximity. But the city was dirty and noisy. Harry Kissel saw an opportunity. In 1913, he developed one of the first planned suburbs in America, Ridgewood, in the Country Club district. Inspired by developer Edward H. Bolton and the Roland Park subdivision in Baltimore, Maryland, Kissel adopted a comprehensive set of deed restrictions.
Said premises shall not be sold or leased by the grantee or his heirs to a colored person, or occupied by a colored person other than a servant to the owner or tenant.
For Harry Kissel's suburb, property values were kept up by keeping Blacks out. Ridgewood became very successful and was soon considered a national model. Harry Kissel touted his ideas all over the country and was invited by President Herbert Hoover to visit the White House in 1924. Kissel was elected president of the National Association of Real Estate Boards in 1931. But just as he ascended to the national stage, the Great Depression dealt a blow to the real estate industry. Banks went under and millions of people lost their homes. But Harry Kissel had an idea. He would find a way to reduce the risk on banks and make home ownership more affordable. In the early part of the 20th century, a home mortgage was typically for a 5-year term. It required a 50% down payment with semi-annual payments over 5 years. A lump sum was due at the end of the loan. Many homeowners couldn't afford these loans and would end up defaulting. Banks bore the entire risk. In 1931, Harry Kissel co-authored an article recommending the establishment of a home loan banking system that was backed by the federal government. President Hoover adopted this idea and signed the Federal Home Loan Bank Act into law in 1932. This act was the start of the modern-day 30-year home mortgage and paved the way for the creation of the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA. FHA-approved mortgages allowed for the expansion of home ownership in the country for most Americans. In 1933, Harry Kissel proudly presented President Roosevelt with the first dividend check from the successful FHA mortgage program. But these FHA loans were not for African Americans and other people of color. Once again, Kissel's plans were based on race. He was a proponent of restricting where the new federally backed loans could be made. Federal and local authorities worked together to draw up color-coded residential security maps in cities across America. These maps showed where banks could and could not make loans. Areas with white residents and racially restricted deeds were identified as worthy of government loans and outlined in green. Black communities were given the lowest rating and branded as high risk or hazardous. In these neighborhoods, no FHA loans would be made. They were outlined in red. This federal policy became known as redlining. The FHA and its national policies had roots in Springfield, Ohio, and were a part of the legacy of Harry Kissel. A complicated legacy that includes modern-day mortgages in suburbs where white families prospered. That legacy also includes segregated cities that still suffer the effects of federally enforced and racially discriminatory housing policies, which have denied millions of Americans from accessing the American dream.